Understanding cultural relativism. Cultural relativism is the idea that beliefs, customs, and ethics are shaped by cultural context rather than universal principles. It suggests that no single moral framework is superior to another, as each society develops its values based on history, traditions, and social norms. This perspective encourages tolerance and understanding of diverse cultures. The core argument of cultural relativism. Cultural relativists argue that morality is subjective and shaped by cultural experiences. Practices considered ethical in one society may be seen as immoral in another. This challenges the idea of absolute moral truths, suggesting that ethics must be understood within cultural contexts rather than judged by external standards. The challenge to universal ethics. Universal ethics asserts that some moral principles, such as human rights and justice, apply to all people regardless of culture. Cultural relativism challenges this by questioning whether these principles are truly universal or simply Western constructs imposed on other societies. This debate raises concerns about moral superiority and cultural dominance. The debate on human rights and cultural practices. A major point of contention is whether cultural practices should be exempt from criticism. Issues like gender equality, freedom of speech, and human rights violations often highlight the tension between respecting cultural traditions and upholding universal ethical standards. Critics argue that cultural relativism can be used to justify harmful practices. The risk of moral subjectivity. One criticism of cultural relativism is that it can lead to moral subjectivity, where any action is justifiable if accepted by a culture. This raises ethical dilemmas, such as whether practices like child marriage or censorship should be tolerated under the guise of cultural respect, even when they conflict with broader human rights principles. The balance between respect and moral responsibility. While cultural relativism promotes respect for diversity, it also requires societies to critically examine practices that may be harmful. Ethical debates often revolve around finding a balance between respecting cultural differences and addressing issues that contradict fundamental human rights and dignity. The influence of globalization on cultural ethics. With globalization, cultures are increasingly interacting, leading to greater exposure to different ethical frameworks. This has fueled discussions about whether a global moral consensus is possible or if ethics should remain culturally specific. The spread of ideas often leads to cultural adaptation and evolving ethical norms. The role of dialogue in ethical understanding. Instead of imposing ethical systems, constructive dialogue between cultures can lead to ethical progress. Cross-cultural discussions allow societies to learn from each other and refine their moral perspectives while acknowledging cultural differences without enforcing universal standards. Can cultural relativism and universal ethics coexist? Some philosophers suggest a middle ground where certain ethical principles, such as human dignity and justice, can be universally recognized while allowing cultural variations in interpretation and practice. This approach seeks to respect diversity while maintaining ethical accountability. The ongoing ethical debate. The debate between cultural relativism and universal ethics remains unresolved. As societies evolve and interact, the challenge is to create ethical systems that honor cultural diversity while ensuring fundamental rights and moral responsibility across the globe.